Welcome to the Real Estate Development Land to Legacy podcast. We talk about all things real estate, and one of the most common challenges for many real estate investors and developers in particular is fundraising. So we dedicate a fair amount of time talking about how to fundraise, what to do. We talk to professional investors and we talk to professional fundraisers. I'm your host, Eugene Gershman. I've been a real estate developer and builder for over 20 years. And today we have a super guest, Dr. Ryan Smolarz, who was a practicing surgeon and one day decided to become a real estate entrepreneur. Dr. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Tell me, how does it happen? You're well in your career. It takes years to become a doctor. It takes years to become a surgeon, and then all of a sudden you decide to become a real estate investor.
Yeah, so it all sort of happened all of a sudden, but there was a lot of things that went into that to build up to that point. So 2010, I finished my residency and went and started practicing. And over the next 5 years, just decided to, really hone in my skills and try to figure out how I wanted to do the different procedures and that sort of thing. And back in 2016, I kind of woke up one day and was like, wow, I can't get into my bank account and I don't know anything about money. And so I'd spent my whole life, working on people. And so a couple months later in 2017, I was surfing with my friends and I looked over exercising and said, you know what, I think I'm going to go to business school. And I said, why? Same thing as, a lot of people say. I said, well, I don't really have any understanding of our financial situation. I don't know how to get into my bank account. I really think that I should try to figure this out for, we were contemplating having children. And, I think that part of your life is just as important as, the spiritual part, the friends, family, all the things. And without that piece, I think it's pretty scary to go through life that way. And so a couple of months later, I was in business school and realized that, man, I just didn't know much of anything about this world. And about 4 days into it, sort of the light bulb went off. And I started to realize it was like, all these commercials out there, all this marketing is directed towards me because my headspace is filled with, what can I get next? What's the watch or the car or the, whatever that next thing is, was filling my headspace. And what I realized is that I didn't want it to be that way. I wanted it to be the entrepreneur way, which is how do I fix the world's problems and look at everything as an investment instead of a credit instead of a debit. And so I changed that day. And really since then, I have put all my efforts towards, not only being a surgeon, but look at the world a different way. And so we are banging the drum and trying to bring people into our community who really feel like that may be the way for them. And so we're trying to get the word out there, getting on great podcasts like yourself.
Excellent. And so do you still practice medicine?
I do.
Okay, so essentially you have two jobs now, right?
Yeah, well, I've got a whole bunch of jobs. Those are two of them, yeah. But my partner has been in real estate for 25, 30 years, has over 8 million square feet of acquisition development, type of experience. And so amongst our team, we have a very solid professional sort of working team, and we're super proud of it.
Yeah, we have a lot of investors and partners who are property owners who come to us and say, well, why do we need to partner with you? Why can't we just do it ourselves? It seems fairly easy. How easy is it?
Commercial real estate, I can't really speak to residential because I'm not in the space, but commercial real estate is a full contact sport. There's no doubt about it. You will get hurt if you jump in, to the deep end and don't know what you're doing. It's taken me since 2017 working every day, as you said, the 2 jobs, but to really get a grasp of what's going on out there. I mean, this is a very sophisticated world using data and AI and all the things to get that competitive edge. And so if you don't have it, it's like being in equities in the stock markets and things of that sort. You're playing against a lot of big data, big knowledge, people who have been doing this for, a career and have their eyes on it every single day. You will get hurt. You will get stung, I think, if you don't go through the process.
You will get stung. And I noticed in your biography, you also know a thing or two about cryptocurrency.
Yeah. So Fund does have a back end that's on the blockchain. We believe in true transparency, and we want everything out there that's in a very transparent way. And so the way in my mind to do that is to put it on the blockchain. At this point in time where we are with the technology, it's really not investor ready. So the way we're doing it is kind of an R&D on the back end where the tokens go into sort of a repository. And even if they were hacked or blown up or whatever the case may be, it doesn't have any sort of repercussions to our investors. But we want to have that going on the back end to be ready for when it goes mainstream. Because I think within the next 5 years, most funds, if not all of them, will have some sort of tokenization, some sort of blockchain, especially when title goes on blockchain. I think that there's really going to be no other choice to get, make that progression to Web 3.0 and tokenization.
So if you don't mind, dumb it down for me a little bit more. What does that mean? What's a tokenization and what do you do with a blockchain?
Yeah, so a block to be on the blockchain basically means it's very secure, and it gives you a key. And then the next block is the next bit of information that goes onto the chain. So it's literally a blockchain, a block of chains of a chain of blocks of information. And so with that, if you take one of the pieces out at the first and replace it with something else, then it's very easy to tell that it was manipulated. And basically the things that are in place, the safeguards that are in place will wave and kind of say, hey, over here, this was changed, and it will go back without being validated, and it will go back and put in the correct information. So you can imagine that if you're going to buy a house in the residential world and the title was on the blockchain and someone had a car run into their house and oops, they forgot to put that on the proper documentation, that those sorts of things do not fall through the cracks, right? You have a very valid, true representation of what's happened to the home, what repairs have been done, how the maintenance has been caught up, or not, for that matter. And so with that, really the purpose of it is to close the trust gap, where if I'm doing business with you, I don't have to trust you. I just have to trust the platform. And that really is what it is in its core. So in my mind, if you were able to do that, once the technology gets to a place where we are able to do that, then the due diligence on the sponsors, well, especially on the asset, the sponsors may be a little bit difficult unless we put the actual person on the blockchain. But the deal itself becomes much more, the research that you do becomes much more valid, because the information that you're taking, that you're running your models on, is true and accurate. And so I think the world needs it, and I think that's where we're headed. It's pretty underground at this point, but there's lots and lots of people out there that are building the technology, and I can't wait for it to come to fruition.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And so does that connect to your property somehow?
Yeah, so our fund, when as we are raising, so the second kind of piece of that, which I didn't touch on, was the tokenization, and I will do that now. So when an investor comes and brings in capital, that capital goes into basically what is a bank account, right? And we use it for expenses or buying properties or whatever we've agreed to use those funds for. But as far as the tokenization piece, really over the course of time, what has happened is, or not what has happened, the intention of real estate is to be an illiquid asset, right? So I give you money to build whatever it is you're going to build, but you hold on to that money for 5-10 years, whatever the hold period is, correct? So now if those funds instead go into a tokenized asset and they're broken up. So let's say you own 5% of the deal. Well, you have 5% of the ownership of the tokens. And as we go through the process, there will be secondary markets set up. There's a lot of SEC compliance and things of that sort that go into it, but I can trade those tokens, which represents ownership. Say you wanted to come in and take over. Let's say you were really good at getting things through the township, the county, for zoning and all that stuff. And so you really know it well, and you can keep your eyes on that piece. But when the shovel hits the ground, you're not really knowledgeable about the electricity or the plumbing or whatever else that goes into it. You're not as comfortable. So you can ride that asset into the shovel hitting the ground, and then you go to the secondary market and say that you are a developer. So you know the millimeters, and you can get the plans, and you can see if things are on track or not. And so you trade out that asset for fair market value, just like on the stock market. It's like trading a stock. And so now you get your capital back in a form of whatever it is that you're trading on. And then I pass that ownership off to you. And so now this illiquid asset becomes very, very liquid.
Amazing. So then it creates a secondary market, essentially.
That is exact. Well, the secondary markets is the holdup. So right now there are several secondary markets to do this, but there's not enough people that are doing it to create basically the bid ask in such a narrow. It's called slippage. So you're gonna take a big haircut on the market trying to find somebody to take on the other side, basically. And so as we build that out, just like the stock market, that slippage will go down, and it being a reasonable, viable option to trade that asset will become more and more sustainable.
Interesting. So going back to your story, you went to business school and you decided that you need to learn finance and be more financial literate. You decided to become a real estate investor. What was the first property that you bought, and why did you decide to acquire that property?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to the story. I was just finishing up business school and going down the road, and a podcast came on and said, you can tell how complicated your life is by how many keys you have. And I looked over in my seat and I couldn't see the seat. It was covered in keys. So, well, my life is very complicated. And then the next podcast that came on, it was a gentleman saying, commercial real estate's extraordinarily complex, but the absolute simplest is storage, because it's a concrete slab with a metal box. It doesn't get much more simple than that. I mean, it does with all the data and the things that we talked about, but all in all, it's the least complicated. And I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. And so I went out and tried to find the best people in the world to train me. Went through many years of, hanging on the coattails of really good, both people that were acquiring assets and building them. And we started purchasing self-storage facilities. We're 8 in, and so plan to keep going. But that's how it all happened.
Amazing. How's a storage facility? How do you finance an acquisition like that?
There's many different ways, actually. We love seller financing, especially in this sort of environment, this macro environment. But you can do it simply with bank debt, and you can either pay the equity or you can raise it with, capital raise. There's all different kinds. Seller financing, the seller holds some of it back, and instead of them getting a big lump sum and having to take a big tax hit, then they can hold that note, and you can pay on it as you go through. That's what we find a lot of, especially the older population who needs that check every month to pay the bills and get the groceries and all the stuff. And they want to make sure that their baby is taken care of, really, and so they still can keep their eyes on it and don't have to do the management, don't have to make sure the yard's clean, and the lockers are cleaned out and all the stuff. So it's a way for them to stay in the game. And part of our job is, well, most of our job is not really commercial real estate. It's relationship building. And so on the flip side of the coin, we love when that happens, because we get to have some of those guys come on board, and we've had some of the investors go into future deals because now they're flush with capital and looking for a place to allocate. So we love it when they give us a call and say, hey, how's it going? How's Susie in 34? How did she come by and pick up her stuff? All of those sorts of things. And just trying to build trust and rapport with the community around the facility and our investors and that sort of thing. I think that we have to keep that center in our mission.
And what is the typical price range for a storage facility that you acquire?
Well, we're going up into the bigger facilities at this point, but anywhere from, I don't know, 3 to 6 million, somewhere around in there, is pretty typical for an acquisition for us. It depends on, is it Class B, Class C? Is it way out in the boonies? Do we think we could turn it around? We're pretty big on value add. So we like the mismanaged facilities, and we love to see it when we do a seller financing deal, and 2 years later we get that call from the previous owner, and they're like, oh wow, the place looks so great, there's lots of traffic coming through and some of those sorts of things. So that's sort of part of it. But yeah, through 3 to 6 to 8, we're moving up hopefully into the 10 to 15, somewhere in there, as we get better and better at what we do.
Right. And so with debt and equity, what is it? What is the typical split there? Is it about 30% equity versus 70 debt, or has the leverage been impacted by interest rates recently?
It has, certainly. The DSCR's gone up, and so I would say that 40, 60, 70, 30, it's pretty typical. Now, if we do a seller financing deal, it could be down to 10. It just really depends on what the terms are. If we get better terms, we can pay a higher price. And so that's very attractive to some of the previous owners. And we're like, look, this is what we can do at this price, because the equity is expensive when you're going out there raising on your cap raise side. So you have to put all those things into the pot and stir it up before you start figuring out exactly what the asset. You put on the pro forma, you have a pretty good idea what the asset's worth. Now you have to put in all those other factors, right? The interest rate, and the amount you put down versus how much equity you have to raise and what those percentages look like. And so it all kind of goes into the mix.
So tell me about some of the metrics that you look at when you acquire property. And it's related directly to what we do when we develop a property. We're mostly on the multifamily side, but I'm guessing storage metrics would be similar in that regard, as far as occupancy, as far as cap rates, debt service coverage ratios. What are your benchmarks? What are you looking for?
Yeah. So DSCR, if a bank's not going to provide the debt, then there's a little bit of leeway there, but still you want to make sure that that's in line. Cap rates, yeah, we look at them, but it's really lower down. If we're coming into a highly distressed asset and the cap rate's 1, well, we've got to understand where are our strengths to add that value, right? Because at that point you're down below replacement costs, and so are you really going to get a 10%, a 10% cap rate on a distressed asset that's 20% full? Probably not, right? And so we look at dollar per square foot, where it is, how much the land value is, how much like you said, the occupancy, the economical occupancy part, like how many people are actually paying versus how many people are in. What are the street rates? If we get a facility with extremely low, street rates, then that gives us a lot of leeway. We can sort of push rents a little bit, depending on what the market environment is. And so I think for a firm, you really have to be honest with yourself where your strengths lie and where you're able to provide that value. And that's going to really help with your underwriting.
Right. And so then how long do you typically hold a property, or do you have an exit strategy?
Oh, absolutely. We have a bunch of them, but our core one is probably about 5-year hold. A lot of times when we have the debt and we have a 5-year balloon, we want to be very careful that we don't have to balloon out of that asset and then get stuck in some sort of environment that's not great, right? So you look at 2021, somewhere around in there, you buy an asset, and now coming up on 26, everything looks different, and you got to refi out. That's tough, right? So you want to be planning for that. With us as well, looking at the depreciation and the benefits that not only our investors get, but the firm gets. We want to make sure that we get all that bonus depreciation up front with our cost segregation studies. Make sure that we are optimizing the amount of depreciation that we get out of that asset before we turn it over. And somewhere between 3 and 5 by our calculations is about the sweet spot. Because after the first year you get the bonus, and then it kind of goes down from there. So if we can add the value in 3 years, now if you have a very distressed asset, you're looking at the appreciation side, right? You're going to have to get the rents up and some of those sorts of things to be able to do that. So those usually go on to about 5. But if you're strictly pushing rates and doing a little lipstick, 3 to 4 looks really good to us.
And what type of returns are you typically projecting?
Yeah, so for our investors, we're somewhere between the 18-21 IRRs at this point. Even though the economy is kind of slowed, and what you'll typically see out there is somewhere between 14 and 16. We're still although we're a little bit slower in acquisition at this point, we're not stopped. We're certainly pushing as hard as we can, but we're not gonna acquire an asset that we don't feel like we can get the adequate returns for our investors.
Got it. Interesting. Let's see. Forgot my question. So you've clearly studied the subject a lot, and you've bought a few properties now, and you've worked with investors. I'm sure you've had some horror stories or some major issues that you had to deal with and overcome. Can you share, professional investment, real estate related horror story? I'm sure there's plenty in the medical field as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, my world is predicated on disaster. So I'm well versed in that. I can give you one. There was a gentleman basically sleeping in one of our facilities in a unit, and actually there's a little trailer behind the facility, and we had to clean it up. And, we said, you have 30 days. Why don't you go find another place? We'll help you do whatever we need to do to get you placed. And he just sort of disappeared. And what had happened was he decided to make a campsite like right in the trees up the hill, and was causing all kinds of havoc over there. And eventually he perished in his little campsite many months later, making the fires and having the bathroom outside and all the stuff. So he just sort of posted up residence right outside the facility. So that's one. That's probably the biggest one that sticks out. There's all kinds of stories about people trying to make electric wires go in so they can have lights in there and try to stay, and all those sorts of things. So you do have to keep a very close eye on things. Security cameras are, in my mind, you have to have them. Even, if one of them's non-functional, at least people see that there's cameras up. You want the lighting super bright, so the tends to keep the not so great folks away. If it's not lit up, they have the full sort of range of doing what they want to do without being seen. So it's a lot of stories like that. People breaking in, doing crazy stuff. Cars running into units. That happens a lot. People trying to sort of manipulate the system where the locks are broken and take the doors off tracks and all those sorts of things.
Right. All those things that have to happen for you to learn a lesson to next time you acquire property, make sure that there's security on site, cameras, and be prepared for something like that. And I'm sure that's one of your sales pitches for your passive investors to invest passively and stay back and not have to deal with any of that crap.
Exactly. Yeah. And don't be surprised when the camera bill comes, because it's coming. Like there's no way around it. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else, Ryan, that you would like to talk about?
I don't think so, other than the fact that, with the guys out there and girls out there that are starting down this sort of investment journey, I would just encourage you to, really think about that, what I said earlier about that transformation from being a consumer to an investor. I think it's super powerful, not only for the business side of your life, but also the personal side, to be able to really think about, how to solve other people's problems. To me was sort of freeing in such a way that I didn't expect. And so I think there's more to it than the sort of the actual number in the bank account, the money that's coming in versus out. There's something very special about an investor entrepreneur that they think different, right? And to me, it's a very special skill set to have.
Excellent. If somebody is interested in investing into self-storage facilities, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to the link www.storpartners.com. Click the link and have a chat with me and my team. And if it's okay with you, there's a text number that we usually pop up on the screen, and people can text me and my team, ask questions about if they want to, how to get started in their investment journey, if they want, books or resources, whatever the case may be. If they're just trying to figure out how to dip their toe in the water, if we can put that in the links, that would be great. But yeah, so many ways. We're all over Facebook and Instagram and, all the stuff, LinkedIn. So Store Partners, you can find us pretty easy. We also run the Medicine and Money Show. We do that Wednesdays in the afternoon. So if there's ever anybody interested in diving deeper into some of these topics like we talked about, I think that's probably a great resource for people to have.
Excellent. Yes, and absolutely. We'll have all the links in the description. Please visit Ryan and his team and learn more about investment opportunities. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate your appearance and the story's amazing life story. And I do need to research that blockchain thing. That sounds cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And I always love talking about this topic.
Likewise. Thank you.
Smolarz from the scalpel to the spreadsheets. Once a surgeon, now he's carving up these real estate beats. Started in the OR, now he's also on the street. Flipping buildings, stacking millions, got no time for defeat. 2016 had a wake-up call. He was lost in his mind, knew nothing about money, but now he's on the grind. Went from slicing things to slicing deals in half. And when the light bulb hit, he knew this was his path. From the scalpel to the bricks, yeah, he made that switch. Took a risk, now he's rich. Never settle, never hitch. In the game, making moves, he's the real estate surgeon. Cutting deals, stacking bills, every day he's emerging.